One of the things that I love about teaching sewing techniques is hearing the reactions of the student as something new is demonstrated to them. You hear oohs and ahs as each student begins to catch what is being shown, and then there are the final exclamations of amazement when each one realizes how easy the new technique really is. I think you will be oohing and ahhing today as we show you a different way to use your pleater and steps for making a unique quilt block, plus much more. I think it's time to catch some excitement and begin learning some new and different techniques. Welcome to my sewing room. These are the sweetest little girl nightgowns you have ever seen, and they're so soft. This cotton knit feels just like silk. It's so soft. I want you to look at the gathers around the neckline of this one. I have a little secret. These were not gathered the traditional ways. These were gathered by using your pleating machine, or your smocking machine as some of us call it. Let's come on down and see another way for using the smocking machine or the pleater. More ruffles on the bottom, more gathers. This is so sweet. The little angel sleeves on this little gown with the pretty decorative stitches. Well, this was gathered on the pleater. You are going to love this little jabot with the two pieces of Victorian edging sewn together. Now this is from an embroidery machine. This looks like hand smocking, but after it's pleated. This is done hand smocking the super quick way. And then come on down to look at the little ruffle on the bottom using the Victorian embroidery and a beautiful decorative stitch at the top, but it was gathered with the pleating machine. I have one more little precious gown to show you. Again, the jabot look, but this time, this is just done. You use your pleater and you pleat it. This is just a decorative stitch, which anyone has this kind of a stitch on your sewing machine. And then once again, the little gathers around the bottom. So these are new ways to use your pleater. All right, to do just the little ruffle, we're going to have, this is the knit fabric, but you can use any fabric. We serge the edge and then pleat it up on the pleater. Now this way, if we're going to do a jabot, we're going to serge both edges and run the pleating right down the middle in order to put either smocking in the hoop or just fancy stitches, which are so pretty. And this is sort of like the front of a little dress or an inset, the pleating, and this is a full smocking in the hoop. This is very, very quick smocking. This would take you just about 10 minutes to do. I am so happy to have as my guest today my dear friend and business colleague, Deb Yedziniak. Deb is an education specialist with Husqvarna Viking. Deb, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Martha. I'm so happy to be here.
What do you have to share with us today?
Well, as you know, I have done a lot with smocking by hand and machine, but I like to have a lot of fun and use my pleater for other things. And any of those of you who do smocking, we know that with English smocking, we have to pre-pleat our fabric. But when we pleat the fabric, we're getting a ruffle, and I decided that I could use my pleater for other things like doing ruffles.
All right.
So as you see here, I have my piece of fabric, and this happens to be the knit. And I'm having a lot of fun doing smocking and decorative stitching on my silk fabric, but the knit has been a whole new experience. So it's taking our traditional type of pleating, but bringing it into non-traditional by using a knit. So here I did a serger rolled edge on the knit, and I did it on one side so that when I gather the opposite side, this gives me my ruffle. On this one, and this is where we get the jabot, or the other technical old-fashioned term is called ruching, which is to gather the fabric and then treat it as an embellishment. So here we have the both sides with the pleater, with the rolled edge, and then we'll do the pleating threads right down the center. So what I'd like to do is actually show you how to use the pleater to do this.
Okay.
And Martha, you have a pleater right over there.
I'm going to pass this right over to you.
Okay. And then what I'd like to do is show you a couple of things about doing the pleater or getting it set up. And if you take a look here, you'll notice that I have 4 needles in the center of the pleater, and I'm using half space needles. The half space needles are bringing the needles closer together, and I find that this works best. The other thing is that I place them in the center of the pleater because then I'm able to hold my fabric up above the pleater as far as the roller bars go. Usually when we're smocking, we'll always take our length of fabric and we'll roll the fabric onto a dowel just to give us more control over the fabric. After I roll it, then I will place the fabric into the roller bars, and it's just easier for me to hold this roller bar up above the pleater. I'll place the fabric into the pleater, and because this is going to be a ruffle, I want to catch just one edge of the fabric. Get the fabric in there securely, and then I'll very carefully turn my pleater or my handle, lining up the edge of the fabric up against one of the notches in the pleater. As the gathers start to form, I will pull the pleats off myself and then onto the threads. So this is a very quick and easy way to gather a ruffle. Now I made my little sample here short just because we only had so much time. To do the little ruching, I'll do the same thing, but this time when I roll up my fabric, I'm going to center the fabric across the needle, so I'll line everything up in the center. Always be careful to pull your pleats off of the needle so that you don't build up too many pleats on the roller bars, so that you'll have a smoother turning. And in this case, as we turn them, we'll be working along. I didn't quite get that centered, but I think you get the idea. And you can see how quick and easy this is to gather our fabric. So here on one hand we have our ruffle on the edge and then pleating in the center for the ruching.
And so now you are ready to put whatever kind of machine stitching or machine embroidery or whatever you want to do on that.
So in this case, I just have a sample here that I'll be able to show you. And the other thing that's very interesting is that we're able to take our presser foot, and because I use the 4 rows in pleating close together, you'll see how smoothly this presser foot will be able to stitch right down across those pleats without pushing any of the pleats out of the way, which is the #1 problem we have when we do gathering. The foot wants to push the pleats away, and we want to keep those gathers together.
And then after it's all finished, you're going to pull the gathering threads out. But it does hold it, doesn't it?
It holds it in place very nicely.
Okay.
So it's quick and easy to do.
Deb, thank you so very much.
You're very welcome.
And now Deb has some sewing inspirations to share with you. Deb, this little dress of silk du peony is so precious. Now tell us about the smocking here.
Well, this is smocking in the hoop or smocked embroidery, and it's quick and easy to do because you just hoop up your fabric and the machine does all the work. And then it's embellished with another little embroidery in the red work.
A little red work.
So this is traditional pleating.
Pleating, and it isn't just for little girls' clothes either.
Isn't.
This is a lovely dress, and this is the smocking by machine also?
This is actually smocking by machine, and because the waistband was a longer length of fabric, then it's more economical time-wise to simply run pleat your fabric and then to use a sewing machine. So this takes us from traditional smocking for children's clothing as well as adults.
Okay.
And now we're going to do away with the smocking part and just use the pleating for embellishment. So this is a piece of ribbon that I did the ruching by gathering the stitches down the center of the ribbon, and then I applied this onto a ready-made blouse and gave it a great look.
Absolutely beautiful. Oh, high fashion.
Now, Martha, this is my Marie Antoinette pillow.
Oh, how pretty. And
why
did you name it
that? And
I
don't know if you saw the movie, but every gown in that movie was made out of silk, and there was ruching over every single bit of it. So here we've used the pleater to do the ruching, and what great effect that has.
It's beautiful. And now this
last but not least, another
last but
pillow.
Not least, absolutely
worthy of
beautiful.
Marie Antoinette also. And here we're doing pleater puffing, another use for the pleater. And because the pleater will be able to gather both sides of the fabric at the same time, it's quick and easy to do.
Oh, and this beautiful embroidery. And I think the embroidery is the same embroidery as you have on your blouse.
You're right, Martha.
Except you left off the flowers.
Yes, I liked a little more tailored look, so I used the vine effect on the blouse. So that's
Deb,
another way to do it.
Wonderful inspirations. And now Deb has a So Quick and So Easy project to share. Deb, that is such a cute little project. Go ahead and show us how you did it.
Here we have a little I call it a little cosmetic bag. And this is kind of fun because you know I did the knits for the nightgowns, and I decided that when little kids go on their overnight, they also need something to keep not cosmetics in, but at least their toothbrush and their toothpaste, or maybe something for their braces and things like that. And simple little bag, and it's been quilted so that it has a little body to it to so it'll be a little easier to carry. And then we put a little fun tassel on it with beads, so it's fun for the kids to have. And I think the fun part about doing a project like this is to start with a fabric that has a nice design in it. And of course, look at what I chose, the Eiffel Towers.
Because you love France.
I love France and Paris.
go to France and Paris a lot, don't you, Deb?
Yes, I do. So here are my pink fabric with Eiffel Towers, and I have a single layer of fabric for the outside and another fabric for the inside, but I like to have that piece of batting in between, so that will give it body. So you'll place all three of these together, and then what we'll do is to do some stitching, some quilting stitching through the fabric. So you can't see too much on that side, but on the back side you can see here where I did some stippling stitches, so you can do rows upon rows of stippling stitches. On the front side of the fabric it's done in the pink, so you actually don't see the stitching, but you see the effect of the quilted look through the fabric. And here I decided to outline the Eiffel Tower, which is kind of a fun thing to do. And then we could even just do row upon row of stitching and cross hatching if you want. So that's just one way to join all three layers of together and to give body to our fabric. The fun thing here with the zipper is I decided to do the zipper but apply it on the outside of the fabric rather than doing a traditional applique or applied zipper. And here the fabric's all been quilted, just some cross hatching here. And what I did was simply measure your zipper to be as long or as wide as your fabric piece, and we'll sew that onto our fabric so that the edge of the fabric is actually underneath the edge of the zipper rather than on top. And in this case, what we'll do is after one side has been sewn on, you can see how nicely that works, you need to unzip that and turn the fabric over so that you'll be able to simply take the opposite side of your fabric, and then using your zipper foot, you'll simply stitch this right across the edge of the fabric. And the zipper foot works very nicely because it will keep the needle away from the edge of the zipper and allow us to stitch down just along the top of that tape of the zipper. And then to finish this off, you can do something what I call fun and funky sewing by simply stitching across this outside with a serger and maybe a fancy serger edge, or even some type of zigzag, or we could even do some kind of home deck trim if we wanted to, or rickrack. Or the traditional method would be to then turn this right sides together and then simply stitch across both ends of your fabric so that when you're done, you turn the bag right side out and you have a nice finished edge all the way around. So it's a clean finish. And being all fabric, what's great too is that you could throw this in the washing machine so that when the kid's toothpaste opens up accidentally in there, you'll be able to, that plastic is good, but it's a little harder to launder than it is if you still deal with just plain fabric here. So this is really just a fun project.
That is a fun project. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
And now I have some machine embroidery ideas to share. I'm so pleased to have as my guest today Denise Applegate. Denise is Sales and Creative Manager of Embroidery Designs for Cactus Punch. Denise, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Martha. We have this little organdy bowl that I actually did out of wool, and we're going to felt it on our felting machine.
All right.
So I'm really excited about showing you what we have. So we have an embroidery design collection. We have thread, roving, and our wool fabric. What we're going to do is we're going to sandwich a water-soluble stabilizer between two pieces of wool. So let me show you the steps here, Martha, because it's lots of fun. We have a piece of wool, we have an embroidery design, and this is actually done with the water-soluble stabilizer. And then we sandwich the two together. So if I flip this over, it's plain on the back side and you don't see the back side of the embroidery. So that's pretty important not to see that. You have a bottom and sides that we're going to put together. Then once we get those, we line them up to the edges of our little base here and create a bowl. But normally you would do this with a zigzag stitch and it would cover up. We're actually going to do it with the wool and the felting machine.
Oh, you're going to put all the pieces together.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Now what is this over here?
Over there we have our embroidery unit, and the designs are all combined in a very large mega size hoop.
So everything you need is in this.
Is in that hoop.
Okay, for your bowl, your little wool bowl, okay.
Okay, I have 2 pieces of felt, or wool, excuse me, and roving. And roving is a fiber that is not spun, so it's not made into yarn, but you'd probably see it in a yarn shop made into yarn, where this is a raw wool that has been dyed. And we're going to place 2 pieces of wool together like it would be the sides of our bowl. And then we're going to start punching, and what will happen is it will actually fuse those 2 pieces of fabric together, and that becomes the edge of the bowl. So now if I pull this out of here, they're fused together.
Okay, so in other words, you joined the pieces of the bowl, and what about the sides of the bowl? Did you join the sides? I know you put them around the bottom.
Yes, I did. Let's bring it back over here and I'll show you, Martha. We have our sides,
okay,
and the bottom that are all joined together. I did do a satin stitch underneath, but I added the roving on top, so it fused twice.
Well, that is absolutely fascinating, and this little machine is so fascinating. And the interesting thing is, now you do have to use natural fibers, is what I understand. Is that
Yes.
correct? And do you like wool best?
I've used wool, I've used llama, I've used silk.
Okay.
So
Have
I've
you ever
had
used cotton?
I have used cotton.
Use cotton too, but yet you use the wool products on top of it, the wool roving and the wool yarns and the wool knits.
Yes.
All right. Well, not knit so much. Things you knit with is what I was trying to say. Denise, thank you so much. That's a beautiful little bowl. It was fun to see how you can join it together just by using the little punch machine and roving. Thank you so much, Denise.
Thank you.
And next I have a quilting idea to share with you. This heirloom quilt is beautiful, and I have a really special, not 1 square, but 2 squares to share with you. This is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-sided figure that has silk ribbon and insertion, French lace insertion, and more silk ribbon in the middle. 2 different widths of silk ribbon. Now, you might think when you first looked at this quilt that this was exactly like this one. Well, it really isn't, because one has the larger ribbon in the middle, and this one has the more narrow ribbon in the middle. They almost look alike, but they really aren't. So there's a little trick to how you put this this wonderful 6-sided figure together. One of the things I like to do when I'm joining laces, and this is very beginning French sewing by machine, where you simply put one thing next to the other and zigzag. You will notice I've used French lace insertion, silk ribbon, double-sided satin ribbon, but it's silk satin. Insertion, then I've used an entredot, a Victorian embroidery with entredot on either side, more ribbon and more lace. Now, I have not tried to match this lace rose with this one, so I have not tried to match that. However, why do I have these lines drawn here? There is a reason for that. One of these fabrics is very solid, and the lace is much looser. So what I really want to do after I get them lined up, I want to come in and draw lines, so when I am zigzagging them together, I can use my lace pusher here, or more commonly known as a wooden shish kebab stick from the grocery store. I want to be sure I don't stretch the lace out, and so I want to be sure that when I'm sewing them together that they do match up, and just a little bit of a push and a little bit of working with this stick, you'll get them lined up exactly if you have drawn those lines on. Okay, here's going to be my combination. Now what I'm going to do, as you can see right here, I've zigzagged all of these together, and it's very flat. It isn't pulled and curved where one of them was pulled or stretched a little too tightly. That was what we did those lines for. Okay, after we have sewn as much length together as we need to, then I'm going to take my template, which in this case is a triangle. I'm going to put a template here, and then we'll turn it the other way, here, and then here. Now the trick that I wanted to share with you, since if you will notice this is wider ribbon and this is narrower ribbon, that's a mouthful, isn't it? I'm going to take all the pieces that are pointed this way, such as here, and I'm going to use them in one of my 6-sided figures. Then all the pieces that are cut this way, I will keep all of them for another figure. All right, you see I have all of these pieces that came from the same direction that are right here. Are you with me on that? Okay, all of these pieces that were cut in that direction I'm going to use first. I want to share with you another little trick. When you're going to join them together, you join 1, 2, 3 pieces together, and then 1, 2, 3, and then sew the whole thing together. Okay, let me show what you do first. I have this shown to you on the top. You're going to put right sides to right sides together of these little pieces, the triangular shaped pieces, straight stitch on the back, then open it up, press it to one side, press it down, and then after I press it down, I'm going to, not in the blue thread as I've done here, but in the white thread, I'm going to zigzag them. Now, see, this is the back where you can see the little seam, and then I will turn it over to the front and I will zigzag in the same color. Now, let me push this together. And you see, when this one is finished, I'll have the narrow ribbons in the middle. And then when I put the other pieces together that went in the other direction, I have the bigger pieces in the middle. Let's go back, if you will, up to the quilt. I want to show you one more thing. Let's go back to the quilt and let me show with you. Do you see this one has the larger pieces of ribbon that are together? And then come back over here with me 1 minute and you'll see the smaller pieces of ribbon that are here. And that's what you get when you turn one of them one way and one of them the other way. And then it's just simply straight stitching and then zigzagging on the top to finish. Another really fun quilting technique using all of our wonderful, beloved heirloom sewing products. And now I have a beautiful piece from my vintage collection to share with you. I will tell you, this is one of the most beautiful slips in my collection. And when you see the amount of work, you're going to think, how did anyone ever put that amount of work into a slip? Well, they just did. And the clothes were heirlooms, these slips were heirlooms. I'm sure they were passed down through many generations, as are the beautiful heirlooms we're making today. This little slip is probably around 1880 or possibly earlier, and it's made in such an interesting way. You can see how it has the little ruffle that goes down the V in the front, and then the little ruffle comes over under the arms. There's just a little narrow piece around the neckline, which certainly would have had a casing in it to have drawn up. And then here is the Ayrshire work, and as we go down, the more little eyelet embroidery. Come down and look at this slip with the bottom of the slip. It appears that this was hemmed, completely hemmed, and then the lace was butted to the finished piece. The next 3 panels are also finished strips sewn on each side, turned right side out. In other words, a finished piece which was butted to the lace, and then this one was butted to the lace. So in other words, these are double panels of fabric. I don't think anything in my collection has double panels inserted into the fancy band, and a double panel for the bottom part of the skirt, and then the lace butted up to it and stitched. This is a very unusual piece because as you kind of look at it from a distance, you can see this looks darker, 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 because it's a double piece of fabric is the reason it looks darker. For my Sewing from the Heart for today, I have a letter from Lydia from Tarrant, Alabama, my friend that I have had the chance to go to visit. I am over 75 years old, and I will never be too old to sew. I love to sew, especially for others. In fact, I think sewing keeps me young. Some of my favorite Sewing for Others projects are sewing large bibs, walker caddies, and wheelchair caddies for my local long-term health care facility. I always try to use happy fabrics to brighten their day. I think it is so important to make these friends know that they have not been forgotten. Martha, thank you for all of your efforts to spread the joy of sewing. Please continue sharing your ideas with us, your sewing family. Your sewing friend and sewing family member, Lydia. Lydia, it was such a pleasure for me to visit with you in your home and for you to share with me that you had been sewing these beautiful heirlooms for a very long time. And thank you for sharing about your volunteer sewing, and I just loved seeing it. Thank you so much for coming to be with me in my sewing room today. I would just love to invite you to come back next time.